feelings. I know certainly as a college professor, students will sometimes frustrate us, and we need to manage our feelings with that. So just a little bit, what is humor? The discrepancy between expectation and reality. It is. I'm serial. You know, so that's a you know, discrepancy between expectation and reality. Incongruity, when an idea or an object is out of place. Here's an example: Catholic guy goes to confession, and he says, you know, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. My wife and I gave up sex for Lent, but the other day she dropped a can of peaches on the floor, and she bent over to pick it up, and I just got overcome by my lust, and I took her right there. And the priest said, well, we all give in to temptation. He said, well, are you going to kick us out of the church? The priest said, I'm not going to kick you out of the church. Why would you ask that? He said, well, they kicked us out of the Safeway. That's why I want to, you know, so, you know, take something and put it out of place, you know. Pain plus psychological distance equals humor. That's an interesting kind of idea. How many of you have seen the comedian Dane Cook? You know who Dane Cook is? All right, well, Dane Cook, a lot of what he does is crap, for my money, but there's one bit I want to talk about that he does, but I also very much like his persona, because his whole persona is, this is so important. Everything I'm going to tell you right now is so important, and you better listen, because, you know, this is really, you know, he has this intensity. He has a bit called A Fight About Nothing, and it's on YouTube. It's a really interesting kind of thing. So he starts out, and he likes to go down a lot of blind alleys, you know. So he says, you know, so I'm in the grocery store, and he goes, I'm over by the Stouffer's cheese pizzas, and I'm trying to decide whether to eat the 1 cheese pizza or the 4 cheese pizza, because sometimes I want 4 cheeses, I want a whole orgy of cheese in my mouth. Other times I want me and 1 cheese, mano a mano, you know, doing this kind of thing. And then I hear A Fight About Nothing, and I get so excited, you know. And he says, and the guy, so I hear this couple, and they're kind of mumbling, and, you know, I get a little closer, and the guy's going, well, I just want to know if there's any goddamn jelly in the house. And he says, and the girlfriend is baiting him. She's like, I don't even like jelly, you know. I don't even know what jelly is, you know, stuff like that. And he's just like, oh, I want to know if there's goddamn jelly in the house. And Dane Cook says, and I got so excited I left my cart. Never do that. You never leave your cart in a grocery store, because what if somebody comes in and they want exactly what you have, you know? So he does this whole thing, and he walks by and, you know, tries to fuel it a little bit, so that there's a little cruelty in it. But I think the brilliant part of the bit is he starts to extrapolate what happens when this couple gets home and how they go into the process of making up. And he says at one point, you know, she's tired of fighting. This is like 2 days later. And she holds out the olive branch, you know. Well, I'm just, you know, doing some laundry, if you got anything you want me to put in the wash. But he's not ready. I got some laundry I'd like to pack, I'll tell you that, you know. And then eventually she's like, oh, you got your haircut. He goes, yeah, good, goddamn haircut, you know. She says, well, it's shorter on the side. Yeah, I told him to cut it short. She says, listen, I hate to see you like this. And then she says, and can I just say one thing? And I don't say this to hurt you, but there were 2 jars of jelly in the house. He was like, yes, I'm aware of the jelly situation here, right? So, I mean, it's a nice group. It's a nice comedy bit for therapy and education, because, of course, it's and couples therapy especially, that they're obviously jelly is not the issue, right? The issue is, how do we get along? How do we respect each other? And the meta conversations that they're not having. So so we can kind of expose those by having clients talk about funny situations. And I love having a funny client, which is always a delight. Risk plus surprise. Here's an example. There was this guy who was a psychologist, and he was going around to giving this lecture called Spare the Rod, which he tries to teach parents ways of disciplining their children without hitting them. And one afternoon he's home because they're pouring a new cement driveway for him. He's getting it repaired. And he looks out his window, and he sees 3 neighborhood kids, and they're putting their handprints in the wet cement. And he comes running out, and he goes, you little sons of bitches, you get out of here right now, or I'll beat the tar out of you. And his neighbor hears him, and he says, I guess that spare the rod stuff doesn't always work. And he says, well, only in the abstract, but not in the concrete. Thank you. All right, just a thought, and perhaps should have kept it to myself. Okay. Briefly about drama and storytelling. Do we end at? We got 10 minutes. Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to go through this like super fast because I want to do a little bit of a performance for you. Narrative is one of the main ways we make sense of our lives. People are hungry for stories. Men are socialized to be storytelling. Now, the masculine mode of storytelling is somebody tells a story about how he shot a deer, but it didn't die right away, and he had to take off his belt and strangle it, and it kicked him in the leg, and he got all bloody, but he got the job done anyway. And while he's telling the story, I appear to be listening attentively when actually I am thinking about what I'm going to say next. So as soon as he's done, I can jump in with my story, and hopefully it'll be better than his. Right? So it's very competitive. And it's very much an entertainment, but men know how to tell stories. So, I mean, a lot of men. So you get a man telling a story, and then you try and highlight the emotional issues told in the story. I remember my dad, who was a minor league baseball player, telling me a story about how this pitcher was trying to intimidate him by throwing at his head, and they didn't have batting helmets back then. He could have gotten killed, and he almost got hit in the head with a pitched ball. But there was never any vulnerability in the story. There wasn't any fear in the story. It was all entertainment. And when people tell stories about being hit as a child, and people are always laughing at that stuff. You hear Bill Cosby's bit, "Old Weird Hal's getting a beating," and everybody's got to come and watch. And there's no empathy for the victim in those kinds of stories. I had a client just a couple of weeks ago, and this woman had broken up with him, and she had been very provocative at the end. She had done what a lot of people will do in relationships, that they'll start to they want out, and they start to treat the other person like crap, hoping that the other person will break up with them. And she was doing a lot of very provocative things. And he sat in a session, and he told the whole story. And I said, at the end, I get the feeling you haven't told anybody this whole story. No, it hasn't. And it's really important for us to tell stories. And every time he said, and then she did this crazy thing, I would say, and it hurt you, and you felt hurt. And he said, yeah, it's hurtful. I said, how about saying I felt hurt? Very, very different. And so you take the story and you highlight the emotional issues, especially the vulnerable emotional issues that are contained in the story. You listen for those themes and feed them back to them. Tell me a story. So we got to skip that part. I want to do a couple of quick masculinity stories from my solo theater performance called Crimes Against Nature, and one of them's kind of a little bit funnier and the other one's a little more serious. And this is the first sketch. This is called Dangerous Liaisons. Ever see two guys go to the movies together? Or wait a minute, you can't perform with a name tag on. Ever see two guys go to the movies together? They never sit in adjacent seats. Always got to have that one seat, homo safety zone. If they sat next to each other, their forearms might touch on the armrest, and that would be tragic. Now, I didn't even know the forearm was a sexual part of the body. Homophobia is a great distancer of men, because if we get too close, we get confused, because somewhere along the line we learn that being close and being sexual were one and the same. We're so afraid to get close, we can't even have a conversation about anything of substance, which is why sports were invented. Give us some contact without any risk of intimacy. It's called male bonding. It's kind of a code language. So if I want to bond with a guy, I'll go up to him and I'll start with the international male greeting. Hey. And then I'll follow it up with something clever like, how about them Yankees? This is code language for bond with me. I give good bond. Now, that's just light bonding. Medium bonding involves watching football together on television, jumping up and down on the furniture, yelling, my man, arguing with the refs, giving each other high fives if we're actually on the team, using a small child to demonstrate a lateral pass. Heavy bonding involves repeated vomiting. Good deal of drinking in heavy bonding. And a secret that most women don't know when men can't find somebody to drink with, we will drink with our dogs. Now, there's two basic problems with this. One, it's hard to get your face in the little dish. And second, dogs get drunk very quickly indeed. You have one beer, your dog has one beer, you feel next to nothing. Your dog is dead drunk because it's 7 in dog beers. Glad to see you appreciate sophisticated humor.